Hello Internet and welcome back to Tromsø Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, the Abyss, about books, movies, music I enjoy, find interesting, or a combination of the two. In this video I'm going to be talking about an album, specifically Inferno by Boards of Canada. And I'm talking about this as a continuation of a conversation I've been having, where I made a video about albums that I liked released so far this year, and many people commented on the video recommending real interesting material. Somebody called Ian V. Art, who, if you go to their channel, you'll find that their real name is Ian Bolrath. This is someone who creates really interesting digital animations. And they recommended this album, Inferno by Boards of Canada, released in May of this year. Now, I had listened to this album, about half of it, once around the time it came out, and hadn't really been that interested in it. I'll come back to why in a minute. But I went back to it because of Ian's recommendation, and I'm really glad that I did. Earlier Boards of Canada material, Boards of Canada, if you don't know, they're a electronic duo from Scotland. I always thought they were from Canada, but they're actually from Scotland. And their early material, they mixed together ambient music, electronic music. They're beats based, but very kind of relaxed. But they were never in that sort of chill out sound because their music was always slightly spooky sounding. It used to remind me of kind of water and melting snow. I remember back in the day in Paris, I saw a video for the lead single from their album Trans Canada Express, and that video was all kind of surfers. So this kind of ocean theme has been a part of their sound, and I'll come back to this term Oceanic in a minute. This new album, my first impression when I listened to it originally, it has somehow a darker sound, which is reflected in the artwork. Their artwork was often greens and blues and maybe yellow, but this is using a lot of red. It's called Inferno. It has some quite horror adjacent imagery in the extended artwork of the album. And my first impression when I listened to it was that it was satirical of religion. Like, it had the same kind of musical palette, but it was twisted to be somewhat darker. And I thought that it was kind of satirizing the religious impulse, and I don't find that very interesting. Like, I'm not a 21-year-old atheist anymore. And I don't really want to hear things that are making fun of or being like bleak about the religious impulse. So I'm really glad I came back to it because I think I was wrong. And when I listened to it again, and Ian in his comments said, spend some time with it, so I have. I think the two words that sum up this album for me best are Oceanic and Sublime. I'm going to talk about why I choose these two words to describe the album, and then I'm going to go through some of the tracks on the album, not all of them, and talk about how I think this applies to them in different ways or what I think those tracks are doing. But Oceanic is a word that I take from the psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud. He talked about the oceanic experience as being the basis of the religious impulse. So Freud said that humans are capable of a particular sort of transcendental experience of the world, a feeling of being part of something greater or a feeling of something that transcends the everyday. He thought that there was some sort of neurological correlate for this, and he said that not everybody can experience it. He personally never had an oceanic experience, but he read enough and he spoke to enough people and he understood enough to know that many people have this. They can have this sense of something greater, something that they can experience as spiritual or divine. And he saw this as the basis of all religious experience, all spiritual experience. I think it's interesting that Boards of Canada took their sound, which was always in some way reminiscent of the ocean and the mystery of the deep and of water, and they took it a step further into the oceanic impulse, into the unknown, into the beyond. So the other related concept that I think about is the sublime. And the sublime is from a little earlier than Freud, but from the same culture that kind of birthed Freud and psychoanalysis. That's European romanticism and romantic literature, romantic art. A lot of this was concerned with nature, nature as beautiful, nature as almost divine, but also nature as terrifying, ununderstandable, something that goes beyond our comprehension. So the romantic impulse was to show the awe-inspiring nature of nature, but awe can flip over into dread, and the sublime is where the romantic can become the gothic. When we are confronted with the complexity of creation, with the incomprehensibility of life, of consciousness, we still don't even know what consciousness is. We come up against the barrier of what is inconceivable and impossible to understand, and where the sublime can move into the oceanic. So for example, track 2, which is the first track that feels like an entire composition with a beat, with a riff, with a really clear chord pattern, is called Prophecy at 420 megahertz. So 420 megahertz is a sine wave, it's a sound wave, it's a tone. And there's a sample of what I think is maybe an Islamic cleric, I think I read somewhere. He's saying, I am God, the divine resonance. This, I think, is Boards of Canada referencing the fact that sound in some way is religious, it is spiritual. Waveforms existed in the universe before eardrums existed to hear them, at least on the planet Earth. This track, in some ways, although it sounds completely different conceptually, it reminds me of an album I've been listening to quite a bit, which is called Radiance, by a Finnish guy called Aleksi Perälä, which is just a drone album where the compositions are made from sine waves at frequencies that he observed during Om meditation. So I feel like this sets up the album as kind of a sonic exploration of the divine, of the spiritual, of the unknown and the unknowable. But there are satirical elements also on the album. Track 4, The Age of Capricorn, features a prayer which is in the kind of American Pentecostal kind of tradition. And to me, the prayer which constructs Christ as a servant sort of expresses a particular kind of narcissistic religious impulse, a religion that's all about the one who prays, all about the worshipper. Come into my heart, save me. Track 5, on the other hand, is a dialogue between a father and son. So obviously the title Father and Son is referencing Christ and God, but the dialogue is where a father is asking his son, if you love God so much, why can you not love your family in the same way? And the son is saying, I love God more than any physical being. And there's a slightly humorous aspect to this track as well, because this dialogue is going back and forth with words that are so processed that they are not even comprehensible. It reminds me almost of like Plunder Phonics music, this track. It reminds me of the Avalanches, for example. It's really effective, it works really well, and even early on the album you already start to notice that Boards of Canada are using more guitar than you may be used to hearing on their music. They've always used it on and off, but there's a little more of it on this record. Track 7 reminds me of a kind of spooky version of the new age French outfit Deep Forest, who used to sample tribal music and music from different Aboriginal communities around the world and turn them into beats-based new age music and synthesizer music in the 90s. This track is again a sort of ambient beats-based track, but it introduces some incredible hand drums and Hare Krishna singing. The track is called Naraka, which is the only word in this sampled song that is not Hare Krishna. And a little digression, this track really reminds me of when me and my friends were at Glastonbury when we were about 19, 20 years old. And my friend Leon took a load of acid and basically disappeared for hours, and we couldn't find him. And when we eventually found him, he was in the Hare Krishna tent at Glastonbury Music Festival. And they'd given him food and he was just lying in there, and they were all like banging drums and singing their songs. And we kind of rescued him, we thought, from the Hare Krishna tent. Leon, how are you? How are you doing? And he said, yeah, man, good. Those guys, they have some really good tunes, but their lyrics are shit. All they sing is Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna in every single song. A later track, track 10, The Word Becomes Flesh, It describes the development of a fetus. It's a female voice, maybe from some kind of documentary, describing in detail how the fetus grows and develops a heartbeat. And it strikes me, that this can be described scientifically, but we still don't understand the moment that consciousness comes into being or is transferred into this physical matter, or really what is happening in the creation of life. And this again makes me think of the Sublime. There's also a dark edge to this track, though, in the context of the times in which this album is released, because of the religious extremists in various countries around the world trying to prevent access to abortion, the pro-life movement. So there might be a certain ambiguity about this track. I think my favourite track on the album is one called Blood in the Labyrinth. It has fantastic use of the voice in this track. The production is sort of like a darker version of their earlier music. It has what sounds like a sitar in it with hand drums, but there's also an electric guitar that could remind you of Cocteau Twins or other types of kind of 4AD, slightly goth type music. It's one of the longer tracks, but for me it could have had 2 more minutes of the final section that it builds up to, because it's just fantastic. The whole album taken together creates a layered, symbolically laden universe of different religious impulses, different religious viewpoints that all circle around the spiritual and the oceanic impulse. Acts of Magic, for example, it has field recordings of insects in it, and you can think here of something like the periodic cicadas that come out of the ground with years-long intervals between their periods of being awake and their periods of hibernation, which is like magic, or just the act of an insect flying is magical. But it also might reference the biblical plagues of the Judeo-Christian Old Testament. So the album's just great, I think. It sounds amazing. It's maybe one of their most rich and layered productions that they've ever done. And thematically, it speaks both to the time that we live in, with growing religious politics, growing religious conflict, but also to the timeless human impulse for the transcendental, for the spiritual, for the oceanic, for the sublime. Thanks for listening. If you like my video, please click on the like button so that somebody else might see it. Feel free to talk to me in the comments. I always enjoy hearing from people, and I'll see you again soon.